There is a study you should know about. Researchers analyzed over 1,000 parole board decisions made by judges across Israel over the course of a year. They were looking for patterns in who got parole and who didn't. What they expected to find were patterns related to the nature of the crime, the length of the sentence, the likelihood of reoffending. What they actually found was something considerably more unsettling. The single strongest predictor of whether a prisoner received parole was not the severity of the crime. It was not the prisoner's behavior during incarceration. It was not the quality of the legal argument made on their behalf. It was what time of day the hearing was held. Prisoners who appeared before the board early in the morning received parole approximately 65% of the time. Prisoners who appeared later in the day, as the board fatigued, received parole at rates that declined steadily, eventually approaching zero before each scheduled break and meal. After the break, after the food, the approval rate shot back up. Then it declined again. Over the course of a full working day, the judges were not applying consistent principles. They were, without any awareness of it, defaulting toward the path of least resistance as their cognitive resources depleted. And the path of least resistance, for a parole board, is to deny the request. Status quo. No change. Send the prisoner back. The consequences of their fatigue fell entirely on the people in front of them. This is decision fatigue, the well-documented tendency for the quality of decisions to deteriorate after a sustained period of decision-making. And it is not unique to judges. It operates in surgeons who schedule elective procedures, in doctors who prescribe medications, in financial advisors who manage portfolios, in parents who negotiate with their children, in anyone who is asked to exercise judgment at the end of a long and depleting day. It operates, almost certainly, in you. To understand why this happens, you need to understand what decision-making actually costs. Every choice you make, from the trivial to the significant, draws on a shared pool of cognitive resources. The academic term for this is executive function, the set of mental processes that govern planning, reasoning, impulse control, weighing competing options, and overriding automatic responses. These processes are metabolically expensive. They require glucose. They require sustained neural activation in regions of the prefrontal cortex that are among the most energetically demanding in the brain. And they deplete. Psychologist Roy Baumeister, the same researcher who documented negativity bias, proposed the concept of ego depletion in the late 1990s, the idea that self-control, willpower, and deliberate decision-making all draw from the same finite reservoir of cognitive energy. As that reservoir empties through the course of a day, the quality of decisions made from it degrades. You become more impulsive, more risk-averse in some domains and reckless in others. More likely to defer, to maintain the status quo, to choose the default option rather than engage in the effortful weighing of alternatives. The depletion shows up in ways that are often invisible to the person experiencing it. You do not feel like you are making worse decisions. You do not feel like your reasoning has been compromised. You feel, in most cases, essentially normal, perhaps tired, perhaps a little irritable, but fundamentally functional. And yet the research is clear, the decisions made by depleted individuals show measurable, predictable degradation that the individuals themselves cannot detect. This is the insidious part. Not only does fatigue impair your decisions, but it also impairs your ability to notice that your decisions are impaired. The very mental machinery you would use to evaluate whether you are thinking clearly is the machinery that has been compromised. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker, who has spent his career studying the relationship between sleep and brain function, has documented what happens to decision-making under conditions of sleep deprivation. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational deliberation, long-term planning, and impulse control, shows significantly reduced activity under sleep loss. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the emotional alarm system, shows amplified reactivity. The result is a brain that has simultaneously turned down its capacity for careful reasoning and turned up its sensitivity to emotional stimuli. You become more reactive, less reflective. More likely to respond to the immediate emotional salience of a situation rather than its actual long-term implications. Walker has compared this to disconnecting the prefrontal cortex from the amygdala, removing the rational check on the emotional response. The person operating on insufficient sleep is not just a tired version of their normal self. They are, in a measurable neurological sense, a different decision-maker. A less capable one. One whose intuitions fire louder and whose reasoning fires quieter, at exactly the moment when the balance should be the other way around. The implications of this are everywhere. Tired surgeons make more errors. Fatigued medical residents make more diagnostic mistakes. Sleep-deprived drivers make driving errors comparable to those made under alcohol intoxication. And perhaps most troublingly, when you ask people under conditions of sleep deprivation how they are performing, whether they feel impaired, whether their judgment has been compromised, they consistently report that they feel fine. That they are managing. That while they may be a little tired, they are not impaired in any serious way. They are wrong. The self-assessment capacity goes first, along with everything else. So what do you do with this? The first and most obvious answer is structural. Protect the decisions that matter by placing them early in the day, before cognitive depletion has set in. This is what Barack Obama meant when he described deliberately limiting his daily decisions about food and clothing, to preserve his decision-making capacity for the choices that actually mattered. It is what many high-performing individuals mean when they talk about morning routines and reducing decision load. The goal is not productivity theater. It is protecting cognitive resources from the relentless attrition of a decision-filled day. The second answer is awareness. Research by Shai Danziger, the lead researcher on the Israeli parole study, found that simply being aware of decision fatigue does not fully protect against it. The effect persists even when people know about it. But awareness can still trigger useful habits, recognizing that the choice you are about to make at 9 in the evening after a full day of work is not being made under optimal conditions. Recognizing that the impulse to say something harsh, to make a financial decision, to abandon a difficult project, may be coming not from genuine conviction but from a depleted system looking for the fastest available exit. And the third answer, the one that the research most unambiguously supports, is sleep. Not as a passive absence of wakefulness, but as the most powerful cognitive restoration process available to you. During sleep, the brain does not merely rest. It actively clears the metabolic byproducts that accumulate during sustained mental effort. It consolidates memory, repairs neural connections, restores prefrontal function, and resets the emotional reactivity that fatigue amplifies. 7 to 9 hours is not a luxury or an indulgence. It is the maintenance schedule for the most complex decision-making system on Earth. The parole board judges were doing their best. They were experienced, principled, trained in the law. But the hardware running their principles had degraded over the course of the day, and they had no way of knowing it. You are the same hardware. And the decisions you are making right now, or planning to make later tonight, or after one more hour of work, are being made on a system whose remaining capacity you are probably overestimating. The most important decision you can make, most days, is the one about when to stop making decisions.